I am Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on January 17th, 2020. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organization around the world. If you're listening live, we'd love to have you join us in our chat room. There's a link on our live page up there to a YouTube page that'll have the chat room in it. Many of you have found it. We're seeing you out there as well. If you have questions, if you're listening to the recorded version and have questions, you can always send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget, subscribe to this podcast and many others that we have on your favorite podcast app. You can also find us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. If you're on the live page right now, just hit the subscribe button below and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever we do anything new. Jacqueline Robinson is our host today. She works as a learning development consultant with Gallup out of our LA office. And Jacqueline, great to see you on Call to Coach. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you. We are going to spend some time talking about teams today and building a better team. And you've got some great things to say about that. Teams, this whole year, we're spending time talking about teams and managers and just how important that is. The managers get a lot of talk in what we're doing today. We're going to, we spent the first two sessions kind of talking about the manager's role on a team and why they're so impactful. So we've talked about that in session 1 and 2. Today, we want to come at it from, okay, now we have teams. How do we build strong, robust teams? How do you want to start with that?
Yeah. I think it goes back to, firstly, making sure that the team has a mission and a purpose. What is it that we're contributing towards? They really appreciate that North Star. And then once they've got that mission and purpose, what are the individual strengths that we're bringing together to make this team more cohesive? What are those powerful partnerships that we appreciate because we're more productive and more collaborative when we recognize how we work best with one another? And then alternatively, too, what are some of those partnerships that we struggle with at times, and how can we work together so that we can find that happy medium with our strengths and collaborate more effectively?
We're going to spend some time in the fourth part of this, so after this, with some kind of the details and activities, and not just activities, but why in the activities what we're looking for. But we have some things kind of queued up for the audience today. And when we think about building a better team, what are some tips as we go into this and not just help a manager, and teams don't just exist in the workplace, right? We have teams in everything that we're doing. So you don't necessarily need to be a manager or even a coach. I think there's going to be some great advice in any areas where teams are gathered. So Jacqueline, kick us off a little bit. What kind of goodness do you have for us today?
Yeah. So whenever I think about building teams, I like to ask questions about to people. What motivates you? So actually at Gallup, we have motivation cards, and what we suggest every team member does is whip out those cards and start to sort between what really motivates me, what sometimes motivates me, what just wouldn't motivate me, and then taking that top 5 of what really motivates me and sharing out with teams. Students can do that as well. So if you've got people in universities or you're a parent and you know that your student collaborates quite often in sports or on school projects, it's such a great type of, it's an activity, but it's also, I think, a great discussion that teams can have to say, this is what's going to drive me. Because if we don't know what motivates someone, we can talk to them until we're blue in the face. And it doesn't mean that that's going to get the job done. So I think starting off, just understanding first what motivates you and drives you, so that when we have that partnership, I've got that in mind. And then what do you take pride in? Another question I love is just, what magic did you create today? I think it provides such important information in terms of what makes that individual really excited and energized. And it also offers some insight for you as to, if you know what the magic they're creating, that gives them a lot of energy. Maybe I could use their help because that's not something I do that well. And so it also gives you some insight into what that person does well.
So you're kind of talking about like what's good with the team, right?
Yeah.
What's working? What's the importance of recognition and team recognition as we talk about building?
Yeah.
How important is that we get recognition out through the team?
Very important. Very important. I think the more that you end up recognizing those effective partners that you have, or the team overall, the more they realize that they're a contributor for you, and that there's value that they're bringing to the table. And without that recognition, teams don't know what they're contributing, and they don't know what excellence looks like. And so being able to recognize others lets them know, oh, this is actually a talent, or this is a strength I have, and this is the tasks that I'm completing are valued, and my contribution matters. And we know that if they don't feel like they're contributing to a team, they don't feel like they're really a part of a team. So I think that that's incredibly important. And as a manager, questions that you might want to pose sometimes, even at a team meeting, are, have you recognized someone recently for the work that they've helped you with this week? And more oftentimes than not, I feel like most people will say no. And I actually do really value what they did for me, but I forgot to give them that thank you, because it just got caught up in my day to day. So I think as a manager, or even if you're a professor, or you're leading any type of team, that's something to keep top of mind, and you can kind of push the button on the team members to make sure that they're holding themselves accountable to that recognition.
Yeah, I spend a good chunk of my time helping college students form teams,
Yeah.
in a lot of the classes, capstone classes, or just any of them where they put team projects together. And we talk about team acceleration and formations as we're putting those together.
Yes.
We also have a Q12 question that says, I've received praise or recognition in the last 7 days. One of the things I think you alluded to, but I really want to hit on, is the manager or the leader in the situation
Yeah.
giving time for the teams to recognize each other, right?
Yes.
I think sometimes it's not enough to just say we should do it, but not only give time, but also lead in that. Do you have anything you want to? Would
Yes.
you add anything to that?
Yes. There's actually, so I was just connecting with the manager a month ago, and one thing that he did, he didn't just allow for feedback to take place in a team meeting so that recognition could occur. He whiteboarded it and said, let's talk about everything that's gone very well for us over this past quarter. Let's recognize each other. And then they had the entire board full. He screenshot it and sent it to me, and it was just full of recognitions and positive contributions that the team had made. So I think doing things like that is so valuable. So again, it's that manager taking the lead, creating that opportunity and open space for recognition, and then just making a big deal out of it and saying, "Look at all the great work we've done." And I think what made that even more meaningful and impactful is he did that at a time when everyone was very busy and swamped, and they weren't taking a moment to just pause to see how far they'd come and to recognize one another. And that tends to be the time, I think, when most managers or leaders might shy away and say, well, it is really busy right now, I don't want to pull them from the work. But that actually motivates them and engages them to do even more.
Yeah, Jacqueline, I mentioned, I think it's important that the leader, manager in these situations kind of lead by example. In other words,
Hmm.
I don't think teams will naturally recognize one another just if you say to do it. I think it
Hmm.
has to be led out by the manager. What have you seen in the work that you've done with leaders? What have you seen work really well where managers lead by example and are recognizing folks in their teams? What kind of things have you seen where that's worked really well?
Um, I've seen some where they've openly created what they would call a celebration station.
Hmm.
And so they've created a space in the actual department where people can come, and there's greeting cards and blank greeting cards and markers. And that was the manager taking on the responsibility to say, I want us to be able to recognize one another. I'm going to take that first step. So let's create a workspace that's specific for you to be able to just walk over and create some cards. Others will do particular call outs. So once a week, they are engaging in a piece of recognition for someone based on their ability to go above and beyond for the team. Um, let's see, others will um, announce them in an e-blast. And so the rest of the department, because you have people, of course, that are working different shifts, and
Yeah.
especially if you're a huge team, it can be harder to make that announcement. But if someone wants to be publicly recognized, then adding that into an e-blast so that all of the team can see it. And then I've had another one. that ended up copying in a leader. So every time that the individual did something, again, that went above and beyond, this was an individual that had high significance. So for him, it was important that the leader then see the great work that he was putting forth. And so just embedding the leader and copying him to that email was everything to that individual.
I think going back to your values statement earlier, motivation, we have some values cards or motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those cards, understanding how that team is driven and understanding
Yes.
how it's done. Our sales folks upstairs, they just sit right above me up here in Omaha. They have
Yeah.
a bell that they ring. So whenever they make a sale,
Yeah.
you get to go out and ring the bell, right? We
Yes.
have, it's no secret, we have kind of a drop system here at Gallup, and these sit near my desk. I didn't stage it this way, but they were they were nearby.
They're there.
And you talked about managers putting out a kind of a recognition station, and we all over
Mm-hmm.
the building have these drops. They're blank ones that are available. You can just pick those up.
Yeah.
I always encourage organizations. We make this available. It's a downloadable tool inside the Strengths, inside our Gallup Access now and such. But I really encourage organizations to
I do
to
too.
to personalize these. Right, but come up with your thing, whatever that is. This is from our book, How
Yes.
Full Is Your Bucket? But whether it's this or something individualized, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
great. And I do think maybe one more statement from you on the individualization of recognition, that it just doesn't become a blanket, like, hey, everybody did a great job. But
Yeah.
right, can you talk a little bit about the importance of individualization and recognition with teams?
Mm-hmm. I think what it helps people understand is what that person does well too. So even though you might be individually acknowledging one person for going above and beyond, people the team itself starts to recognize what excellence looks like for that particular initiative as well. So that helps the team work more cohesively, because now they have a baseline to say, oh, that's what going above and beyond looks like. That's what excellence looks like. Or, man, that's not something I do well at all. This person just got recognized for it because they do excellent work in this category. I'm going to partner with them moving forward. So recognition is something that I think reinforces the value that someone's bringing to the team, but it also helps the team see when it is publicized, the value that person's bringing, potential partnerships they can have in the future, but also if that's a role that they also have and it's a responsibility they have to carry out. Now I know what excellence looks like.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Justin says from the chat room, sometimes we feel at e-blast, and so it can be a demotivator for people who don't get it
Mm-hmm.
there. And okay, so this is the importance, I think, of knowing your team, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like you got to, for some that can be very motivating. For others, it may not be. This is
Mm-hmm.
not it's the drop system that we have that people love may not work in some places. Like,
Yeah.
and so the key is, I think, how we started this is knowing the team. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you can know the team unless you're asking the right questions. We spend a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time on and practicing this, right? By the way, we have
Yes.
spent a lot of time in managing our folks. What's the best recognition you've ever had?
Mm-hmm.
And
My
right, and kind
favorite.
of trying to get to the clues that are associated there. Like, okay, what is meaningful to you? So yeah, Justin, right
Yes.
on. If you're just doing blanket recognition to do it, okay, that's going to come across kind of cheesy
Mm-hmm.
and not be very motivating, where we have to spend some time really focusing on that. I want to spend the remainder of the time as we think. So that's the real positive side of recognition, understanding
Yes.
the team's values, motives, all those pieces. I want to talk about an area where I think growth has even more potential, and that's in the area of
Mm-hmm.
conflict. And I think we sometimes think of conflict as a team destroyer, a team breaker,
Yeah.
a team divider, where I actually think there's great opportunities for the manager when there is dissension or when there is conflict. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Conflict can bring forth, healthy conflict can bring forth creative evolution. I think it helps people it brings all the issues to the forefront so that you can get to the reasoning behind it and move beyond that. I think if you let conflict brew, then now it can create paranoia, and that's what can really disrupt the team. But when it's healthy conflict, you can create such resolution and move forward from that. And we always talk about how adversity is something that sharpens us. It makes us a stronger individual, but it can also make a stronger team. And there's healthy ways to move through that conflict as well. And one might be just talking about bringing the team together after a challenging assignment, or bringing the team together at the end of the year to say, over the past year, over the past quarter, what was our biggest challenge or adversity that we faced? And what do we feel made it so challenging? And what were some of those barriers to our success? And then let's start talking about some solutions. So based on the adversity we went through, was that something we overcame? And if so, how? But if not, what are some implementations we can put in place to rectify that moving forward? And that doesn't feel challenging. It doesn't feel like that's going to make people shy away. And it's just inviting people to start talking about some things that were troubling for them for the year. And I think they respect that. And a manager as well, when they're bringing that to the forefront to say, okay, let's talk about that, because I definitely respect and understand that was a difficult time for all of us. So let's put something in place to move forward.
Nobody enjoys conflict. Like
Yeah.
just nobody does, right? It's part of the workplace. It's something we have to do. It's something we have to kind of get comfortable with. But when we think about the framework of strengths, what kind of advice would we give as far as like, how do we use strengths to our favor when we have teams that may be in conflict or disagreement?
My mind goes right to the best of me. Where in many of you, if you've gone through our strengths courses, you know this, but it's a healthy way of everyone addressing when you're going to get the best of them and the worst of them. So having everyone self-reflect for a moment and describe, you get the best of me when, in relation to a team, you get the worst of me when, this is what I need from you, and you can count on me too. And then have everyone round robin. And I absolutely love having people fill out the statement and share out, because think about that person that might appear disengaged to everyone else on the team. And they say, you get the worst of me when I'm not able to connect with people daily. And they're locked in, a laboratory all day long and they don't see anyone. And that's 80% of their job instead of 20%. Now it makes so much sense to the individuals on the team why this person is disconnected and disengaged. And so it quickly starts to reduce conflict and create a level of understanding in a way that doesn't feel like it's conflict negotiation. And then you hear that person say, this is when you get the best of me. And maybe that's only 20% of what they do, but people have observed that. And now they recognize, oh, yeah, I have noticed that. So no wonder this person feels, down and out, and their well-being is suffering. And they're just trying to survive versus thrive. So I think that's a good way for people to start understanding their themes. And I'd say that's the part one. And that part two then is to say, okay, based on what you've written, where do you see your themes at play and what you do best? Do you see your themes at all? And when we get the worst of you? When we talk about what we can count on you to do, where do you see your themes play out there? And so it's then taking that level of understanding of what you love, what drives you, what motivates you, what you don't enjoy, and then saying, now where do my themes come into play there?
Yeah, and I think that's the power of that conflict is like if we don't have that conflict, and so managers don't run from this, coaches don't run from this, don't let your managers run from it. When we get this conflict, we're getting the opportunity to have those conversations of clarity because in conflict, people get very, very clear oftentimes about what's bothering them, right? Sometimes it's hard to say, oh, tell me the best 5 things. And people kind of stumble and they're like, tell me the worst 5 things. Oh, they've got those kind of nailed, right?
Yes.
And so you've got, because those hurt so much, you got opportunities to do that. You're in good company, Jacqueline, because Ann just said, I just did that day before yesterday in the workshop, and it really changed the entire tone of the workshop in a good way.
I'm really happy to hear that.
It was so powerful. Yeah, I think that's
really
one of
happy
those.
to hear that.
It's one of those tools, right out of the kits that help.
It is.
And you can, Jacqueline, talk a little bit about this because you're in the field all the time and you're working in these spaces. I feel like sometimes we get hung up on the tool as opposed to really trying to drive to the end result, right? We don't necessarily have to do it exactly or have that exact form in place, right? We can get the spirit of it and get it done. We can modify it in a way that works for smaller or bigger groups. Is that right?
Talk a little
bit about
absolutely. And even reverting back to that tool itself, one thing I like to talk to managers about is you might have a very large group, and then you've got everyone that's filling that out by email, bringing it back into you, or you're on the phone with someone, or you're in a one-on-one with someone. But there's just so much value in doing that particular activity. And what I like about it, because we get so focused on sometimes tools and strengths in those 4 statements, whether you're a strengths-based organization, or your leaders and managers are have taken strengths, and you're going to end up rolling out CliftonStrengths to the rest of the employees, but you haven't yet. It's such a great tool that you can use, because it's not necessarily a tool. It's not something you have to go and buy, but it's a conversation you're having. And that conversation is what unpacks the story behind what's driving people, or what might be creating some conflict. So that alone, I think, in those 4 statements can be so powerful.
Yeah, it allows us to, and I think you have to take the time to get these things done. This is the hard part.
Yes.
Especially, we run so often in crisis mode that we're just kind of
Yes.
constantly just reacting to. And I think even though we're reacting to a conflict, there could be some proactivity in this, and
Yes.
right, building a
Yes.
framework, building some understanding, having an idea of who people are and what they bring. Did you
Yes.
have you found, as people find those moments, have you seen teams actually begin to change responsibilities kind of based on
Yes.
that?
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating to see too, because people have an aha. And I think whenever they go through they go through that exercise, I think it's probably the best way to phrase that.
Mhm, mhm.
It gives them the confidence to say, this is what's been driving me crazy over the last few months, because I just wrote out when I get the worst of me, and I didn't think about that before. Or now I know what drives me so much. And so it gives them a framework and the words to speak in, to communicate that with confidence to the team, or to their manager in a one-on-one session. And if you've got that manager that is focused on development and matching talent to task, they start to shift those responsibilities. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. And the teams just come together and work so much more cohesively.
Yeah, it was a brand new concept for me when I came to Gallup. I never worked in a company where,
Yeah.
as they discovered me, and I discovered some things about myself, where responsibilities could begin to change. And like,
Hmm.
even though I was hired for this, well, maybe we should have you do more of that, right? And it's not an
Yes.
overnight solution. I always tell my college students that doesn't happen overnight. You got to be around for a while sometimes to
Yep.
make it happen, right? But we're in organizations that can kind of shift and change, and where that is honored, as opposed
Yes.
to, no, we hired you for this. I think there's some real value there. We need to wrap this. Any other thoughts? Any other final thoughts on when we talk about building teams? We're going to spend some time on some
Yep.
actual exercises in the next segment, in segment 4. But any other thoughts before I wrap it?
I think even ending on that positive note, so we talked about the challenges teams can have. Sometimes you can learn from those challenges and move away from conflict based on what also went well. So having the team share out what was the accomplishment we've been proud of the most over this last quarter year, and what made that such a valuable and prideful experience for us. What strengths were at play in that accomplishment. And sometimes you can take, again, from that best practice and replicate it in that area that's become a challenge, or an area of conflict. So yeah, I think that's where I want to end, and on leading with positive intent.
Yeah, no, I like it. Well, and I'll say, I think both situations are actually positive situations, right? Of both
Absolutely.
recognition and what's going right, and then confrontation or conflict or a disconnect is an opportunity to make that positive, because you're
Absolutely
getting
is.
clarity from your team. So,
Hmm.
Jacqueline, hang tight as we wait. We'll push over to 4 here in just a second, but with that, we'll remind everyone to take advantages of all the resources we have available through Gallup Access now. You can visit gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. That actually, if you use that URL now, gallup.com/CliftonStrengths, that'll take you right to the strengths dashboard. So we kind of built that in a way to make that easier, right, to get to your top 5. We will post full transcripts of this program, as well as with all the links. Jacqueline mentioned a bunch of things in there. We'll have links in those show notes over on our
Yes.
gallup.com page. If you go to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths, you can also search Clifton Strengths on YouTube and find us there. Subscribe to that channel. That's kind of our edited video channel, as well as our live page. Many don't know every live program is recorded and available for you out there as well. Search Gallup Webcasts Live, and you'll be able to find it there. Of course, we're available as a podcast anywhere. Search Gallup Webcasts. You can also sign up on the page that has the transcripts. You can also sign up for the brand new Clifton Strengths community newsletter. Every month, we'll send you the most up-to-date information on what's going on with Clifton Strengths. If your organization is struggling to implement this, or you just want Jacqueline to come and help with this kind of stuff, right? She
I'm
does
here.
that as well. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can get a complete list of all our courses. And we are great, as we're talking about teams and managers this year, We have a brand new Boss to Coach Journey course that's coming up. That's going to be awesome. You can get a complete list of all of them, including the courses available around the summit. Courses.gallup.com is that address. Speaking of the summit, June 1, 2, and 3 of 2020, gallupatwork.com will get you there. Get you registered. Now is the time to get that done. We'd love to see you here in Omaha. And don't forget to join us in our Facebook group. So facebook.com/groups/call2coach, or you can join us on LinkedIn in our group, CliftonStrengths Trained Coaches. Just search for that there. The link is not very handy. It's LinkedIn, but the links aren't very handy over there. So search CliftonStrengths Trained Coaches. You don't have to be a coach to join us. We just love to continue that conversation. Thanks for joining us today. If you're listening to the recorded version, just keep going to session 4. If you're listening live, stay around. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.